So some of you may or may not know this book. It's called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by the Israeli writer and historian Yuval Noah Harari. And apparently it's a very famous book. It's sold over 45 million copies worldwide. And I recently finished it, so I'm going to give you my review on this book. I'll preface by saying I really enjoyed reading this book. I think it's literally the epitome of a popular science book because it has a lot of knowledge in here. There's a lot of stuff to learn from this book. However, it's written in a very conversational style, very fluid, and it's very easy to read. And there's still a lot of vocabulary you can pick up from this book. Even though the title says A Brief History of Humankind, it actually delves with a lot of different topics, which I really found super interesting. It goes through sociology, anthropology, biology, economics, history, of course, religion, theology. A lot of different topics are covered in this book, and I find that really interesting because it's really useful in giving you a really broad, comprehensive view of, humankind and human civilization. Towards the end, it goes from less of a history book to more of a reflection, deep insight psychology book, and it really is just a reflection of how far we've come as a species. And one big aspect of this is the damage we have done to other species. And he does mention industrial farming and the ecological crisis quite a lot, the climate crisis quite a lot. And he doesn't push his argument on you, which I think makes it all the more compelling. And I really think it is truly insightful, and this part was particularly eye-opening. Throughout the book, there's quite a big presence of the author's own opinions. And a lot of his opinions are very interesting and they're very thought-provoking and they're very insightful. One of the things he did say, for example, about the scientific revolution was he calls it the discovery of ignorance. And later he backs that up with a really long, quite lengthy and quite interesting and profound explanation of that. So one main flaw about this book is that, it says it's a brief history of humankind, and it is exactly that, a very brief history of humankind. So I'm saying if you're looking for something more substantial, I'd recommend go for something that isn't a popular science book and it's something that is truly history book only, if you're looking for more facts. There's quite a big absence of footnotes that one would expect to have in a book about the history of humankind. However, again, it is intended as a popular science book. But one thing I noticed while reading it is it wouldn't really give you a typical history book recollection of these events. They would be more intertwined with the story and with the author's own narrative. And with that, I find another shortcoming of the book that I didn't personally love, and I saw a lot of Goodreads reviews also thought the same, was that the book was very biased was very Eurocentric and biased towards capitalism at times, especially in the last few chapters. And I think it would have been more useful to give just like this book gives a generalized view on history, it would have been good to give a more generalized, more all-encompassing viewpoint, a less biased narrative. Also, as I mentioned, this book is imbued with the author's own opinions. And sometimes I noticed Harari went off on quite a poetic tangent of his own musings, and I didn't find that too pleasant. However, one thing I will say about that was that it really does inspire you to think with your own brain and take everything he's saying with a grain of salt. So my final thoughts on this book are, I would definitely recommend it, and I'd recommend it especially to people who are just starting out history books or just starting out reading nonfiction books and are looking to get into something more serious, and take this as a stepping stone towards higher level history books. This book, again, is intended to be a popular science book. So one piece of advice I would give you before reading this book, if you're someone who's looking to read this book, is that take a very critical approach when reading it. Take everything he says with a grain of salt and use it as a building block to do your own research and to formulate your own opinions. Despite its seeming thickness, it looks and daunting appearance, it really is not that long of a book, and I think it's definitely an approachable, good book, an easy book to read. And it really made the book a very enjoyable read, to be honest. There's a flip side to this it could be a bit more factual at times, I think, or it could have a little bit more statistical evidence to back up the author's sometimes quite stark claims. However, it was a great read. It made it a very easy read, and I read it a lot of times at the beach, by the pool, during the summer, and I really, when you read this, you just look really smart, and it's really written in a very accessible style. However, there's still so much vocabulary you can pick up from this, and there's really a lot to learn from this book. So in the end, I would really recommend it. I just keep the criticisms I outlined before in mind.